people cannot afford to buy a home. Let's talk about it.
Oh my God, I love going to work and working full time and still not being able to afford a house. I love that so much. Thank you, world.
She speaks the truth. And I think she's from Australia, and I can guarantee you there's a lot of Americans that agree with what she's saying. Yeah, guys, right now is probably one of the toughest times to be able to afford a house. My day job is that I'm a mortgage broker, so I'm talking to home buyers every single day about trying to get into a new home. And I'll be honest with you, even living in a relatively low cost of living area in the middle of the country, it's still very tough to afford a house right now. Now, if you guys are in the process of looking to purchase a home, I am a mortgage broker. I have my email down below in the description. If you guys want to reach out to me, I'd be more than happy to help you try and get you into your dream home. So if you guys are interested in working with me on buying a home, or maybe you need to refinance, reach out to me, jj@firstteammortgage.com. Thanks, guys. Yo, seriously. Oh man. So I will say, anytime I'm looking at, a file, right? A file of a buyer, and I'm talking to them and I'm letting them know, like, okay, this is what you can actually afford to purchase. Now, that may not mean their budget can afford that, but just strictly on guidelines, this is where I can get you. And then you look around and you see what's available, on the market right now for that price point. There's not much. And if there is something, it's usually not the greatest. And sometimes these loans that my buyers are getting into, FHAs, they can't even buy them with an FHA because it needs too much work. So this is another big problem right now, guys, is people are, getting approved for loans, but what they're getting approved for, there's nothing out there available for them to buy that. Homes are so expensive right now. That's the main problem. Home prices are still elevated from the massive inflation that we've seen over the past few years, right? Prices are still elevated. Sellers still think they're sitting on a gold mine. But what's also has inflated massively over the past few years is interest rates. Now, although they have started to come down, which has been nice, a lot of my buyers who have been sitting on the sidelines have started to reach it back out, have started looking again. Even though rates have only dropped a little bit, but it still is enticing to them. Because there's one thing about this that I think about is like, listen, what will happen if interest rates drop, right? If interest rates become lower, home prices are going to skyrocket. Guys, I'm telling you, every single day I'm talking to buyers, and a lot of them end up choosing to sit on the sidelines and say, hey, I'm going to wait until interest rates come down, which is fine. I'm also the blender that's not going to try to talk you into doing something. Like, if you want to do something, sweet, but I will lay out everything out for you. I'm going to tell you the good and the bad of the decision that we could be making. If you feel like it's not time for you financially, yes, I'm in your ballpark for that. I'm not going to try and push you into a home. There's no way I would ever do that. But what I do want people to know is, listen, if interest rates go down, home prices will go up because there's thousands of other buyers out there that are sitting on the sidelines waiting just like you are. Now, what could happen is interest rates go higher. And that's going to price even more people out of the market, which in return, what's going to have to happen? Home prices are going to have to drop. Sooner, we're already seeing stuff, has been sitting on the market longer than usual. Now, with these rates dropping and the spring market coming, our market has picked up a lot. I don't know about, in your area that you're watching from, but I will say stuff has been definitely picking up recently. But again, I think that's a little bit of the time period we're in of the season, as well as with interest rates kind of on the decline right now. I don't know how long they're going to go down. They may spike up again. We just kind of have to wait and see. But that's the biggest problem here is the recent rise in inflation, the quick rise in inflation, I should say, and then interest rates rising as well. Sellers thinking they're still sitting on a gold mine, and then their house is sitting on the market for 60 plus days. They're wondering what's going on. It's because it's priced too high. There's no buyers out there who can afford it. So I think we're in this like weird period of like waiting until things kind of even out, right? Buyers are kind of getting an understanding of like, hey, this is the new norm. 5, 6, 7% interest rates. That's probably going to be the norm for a while. Maybe. Sellers, on the other hand, are starting to figure out like, hey, maybe my home isn't back in 2021, 2022 prices. Maybe I have to drop it a little bit lower because I'm not having people fight over and say, I'll give you X amount of dollars, over asking. Although that does happen in some cases, but it's rare.
A lot of people cannot make progress financially because they are house poor and they probably don't even know it. Being house poor is when you own a home that you cannot afford. What does that look like? When you have a payment that is a very big percentage of what you make monthly and all you can afford basically is to pay the mortgage. By the time you cover all your house expenses, you are basically left with nothing. I think it's important to talk about this because people are under the impression that as long as you own a home, you're winning. And that is not the case. If you are owning a home stressed out because by the end of the month, you have nothing left, you cannot afford that. That is what we call you bought too much house. With your monthly income, you should be able to pay your mortgage, set money aside, invest, basically still have a life, right? And not feel like you're drowning and not feel like you can't breathe. The biggest, smartest way to do this is waiting to buy a house when you are ready. Not when the pressure is, when are you going to buy a house? When are you going to buy a house? Oh, everyone buys a house when they get married. Why aren't you? No, you need to buy a house when you're ready. Doing this when you're ready looks like this. You should be debt free. You should have an emergency fund and you should aim to have a really good down payment. 5, 10, 15, 20% down. And that will give you margin. That will give you breathing room. That will make sure you are doing this the right way. So don't let anyone pressure you into this. Buying a house is the biggest expense you're ever going to make, at least for most of us. Make sure you're doing this the right way.
Yo, she hit the nail on the head with that. I loved every single thing she said. That is exactly what I preach to my buyers whenever I'm talking to them about, where we're going to be at budget-wise. Guys, one of the worst things that you can do in your life is become house poor. Because when you're house poor, like she said, you have trouble getting ahead financially. Like, there is this stipulation of like, I have to be a homeowner, But I'll be honest with you guys right now, like, if I knew I wasn't going to live in a home, stay there for at least 10 years, financially right now where we're at, for the most part, it's actually cheaper to rent than it is to buy a home. Because when you buy a home, you're not just paying the mortgage. You're not just paying principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. If your AC goes out, you have to front the bill. You have some foundation trouble, and your home's starting to sink into the ground and you got to have it fixed, you are the one on the hook for that expense. Got some damage to your roof, got a leaky roof, you are the one that has to cover the expense. And that's all those items I just mentioned can get very, very, very expensive. And if you're not prepared to handle those kinds of expenses, buying a home at the top of your budget may not be the smartest deal if you do not have cash reserves sitting on the side. But here's the other problem in that situation is to a lot of people, rents are also very expensive. So it's like, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, right? Because if you're not paying your mortgage, well, then you're stuck paying an elevated rent price. But for the most part, if you go live in that same home, the rent is much cheaper than what it would be for just to cover a mortgage payment, right? If you're buying at 7% interest rate. That's what I mean by renting being cheaper. Is if you did the same mortgage, if you bought that same house you were going to rent and you had a mortgage on that property, most likely the mortgage is going to be higher, and then you also have the risk of having to pay all the maintenance that comes with that home as well. To where a rent, you're set. You know your price, you know your amount you're paying for at least 12 months, and you also don't have to cover any of the maintenance issues. You call your landlord, have him pay for it, have him fix it. Have him worry about it. And the best part about renting as well is you're flexible. If you have some life changes coming up that may change where you live, or that you don't want to be in this permanent spot for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, renting gives you that flexibility to be able to move whenever you want. Now, long term, 10 plus years, yes, buying a home most likely is going to come out on top if you're buying it right, if you're not going over your head to purchase that home. What I mean, being house poor. Guys, that's the one thing I don't want people to do. I do not want people to be house poor whenever they are purchasing their home.
It is literally impossible to buy a house right now. I currently work 3 jobs. My girlfriend works 2 jobs. We have a bunch of money saved up, and I still cannot buy a house. Otherwise, we'll be completely house poor. I am so sick of this. I'm so tired of it. We've been working so hard for so long. Both of our credit scores are 700 plus, 720 plus, and we're working our butts off. All we want to do is start our life, live our life, and we can't do it. I'm so tired of it. And now we find out that the money that we've been paying for taxes all this time is going to stuff that it shouldn't have gone to. I don't know how much more I can take, man. I don't know how much more I can take. Like, when is the American dream going to be feasible again? When is it going to be okay to work hard to get good things in life? With both of us combined, 5 jobs, and we can't afford a house. I'm so done, man.
That's frustrating. It is. I mean, everything, like he mentioned, is way too expensive right now. It is. But when you have a government, both sides, that continuously print money and spend money like it's going out of style, wasteful spending, and then also combining that with pumping trillions of dollars into the economy back in 2020 and 2021 to stimulate the economy, this is what you get. When you pile in that much cash into an economy, things are going to get more expensive. Those are the side effects of printing more money. And as we continue to print more money, things are always going to become more expensive. We're going to have inflation, and our value of our dollar is going to get lower. It's a tough world we live in right now, and I really do hate where we're at in this economy. I also think that we're on this tipping point. I mean, we are on the edge, I feel like, of everything going south. I really do feel that. I mean, we're already starting to see some things I've mentioned in other videos come to light of, I mean, if we have one thing go wrong, all hell's going to break loose. It really is. Unemployment is starting to pick up. Talked about, some of that in my previous videos recently, which have blown up, by the way. Absolutely insane. But I feel like a lot of points that I made in that video and that people made in that video were true. Like, times are coming where it may be pretty tough to get ahead. And I hate to say this, but it may take an almost restart of everything. I mean, we may have to have a major crash in order for everyone to get their heads back on straight and figure out, oh, we can't keep doing this. I hope that doesn't happen, because we will have a lot of Americans that will unfortunately have to deal with that. And I have a feeling with credit and credit cards and debts, the amount of debt the average American is in and the amount of debt, or also the amount of cash the American doesn't have in their account to prepare themselves for an emergency, I feel like a lot of American families are going to get hurt. And it worries me. It really does worry me, because, I mean, I see inside people's finances every single day, and some of the stuff I see absolutely shocks me. It does, guys. Like, I mean, my main goal of this YouTube channel would be to help, it's literally to help as many people as possible understand how to handle their money better and to be able to get themselves through tough situations financially because they have a solid foundation built up for underneath them. That is my ultimate goal. And I feel like we're on this path, or, we're right coming up to this spot in time in history where it's going to get even tougher before it gets easier. Unfortunately, I think times ahead may be a little worse before they get better. And I feel like there's a lot of us out there right now who will not be able to withstand those tough times. Bankruptcies will start increasing. Foreclosures will start happening on more families in America. And I'm worried about that, because I do not want that to happen. But unfortunately, with how people tend to live, because there's no financial literacy in our country. Obviously there's stuff taught in schools and stuff, but I think there's something that needs to be taught like at an older age. Because, like, let's be honest, everyone says, oh, we need to teach personal finance in school. When you're 15, 16, 17 years old, the last thing on your mind is, at least there are some kids that I do talk to, they're It's crazy. And I think we need to have more of that in this life or in this culture. But if you teach these younger kids this personal finance stuff, they don't really hit that. It doesn't really hit them until they're 3, 4, or 5 years later in life, and then they forgot everything. I think there needs to be something. I don't know how this would work, but there needs to be something that like every American can sign up for to learn, or like maybe it's just, you know, watching videos on YouTube. I don't know. But we genuinely have to have a change here as a country. And like, I don't know what that is. I really don't. But I hate to see what I'm seeing right now. I tell my wife all the time, like, babe, I just wish there was more people out there who understood how to handle their finances. And a lot of it is just because people never learned. They were never taught. Or they never seeked the advice. So they think what they're doing is okay. Living paycheck to paycheck. Not having more than a couple $100 in their bank account, and if a major emergency hits them, they're just gonna, hey, put it on the credit card. The credit card's my emergency fund. Scares me, guys. It really does.
Yo, I'm never gonna own a house. I just accepted it. It is what it is. I'm not gonna have a home. I was back in New York talking to my pops. I said, yo, Pop, how much you pay for the house we grew up in Brooklyn? He bought the house in 96. And it's a decent house. It's not really big, it's whatever. It's like a middle class, like 2-story, you know what I'm saying, whatever. House was $150K. Crazy, right? Now, here's the next part. I say, yo, how much you had to put down for the 150? They had a deal for like first-time homeowners in New York City in the 90s. 3% is what you had to put down. I'm like, trying to do the math. He just stopped me. He said, yo, $4,500. This man paid $4,500 for an entire home in 1996. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna own a home. Like, what? If that was happening, so my pops at 31 and me at 31, he not going band for band with me. You know what I'm saying? He can't see me, but he got a house though. And I tell you this, I'm never gonna have that. It's not gonna happen.
The other part of that scenario too is wages have not kept up with the, you know, price of homes as well. Like, I mean, you go back in the 90s, and I hear this all the time from the older generation, right? When we're out, we're talking about homes and stuff, and like, oh, well, my interest rate was 11%. You guys wouldn't know what to do with 11%. And I was just like, okay, but what were you guys doing for work? What were you guys making? Like, I mean, the wages back then, along with the cost of everything else 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, was not anywhere near the amount that it takes to run a household today. Not even close. Wages have not kept up with inflation. They haven't. I mean, you could have a dad who works, you know, a factory job that pays you know, an okay wage, and that could support a family of 4, 5, 6 in one, buy a house and have a couple, you know, nice car or two, and they lived a great life. Can't do that today. You can't. You either have to be making a large sum of money to keep it, you know, stay ahead, or also living in a lower cost of living area does help, but it's still expensive here. But it's tough times. It is. It's not exactly the same. I mean, let's look at this next clip. We're just going to compare a difference of 5 or 6 years. And let's see what the difference of that looks like, let alone 30, 40 years.
I bought my house in 2021, and if I were to buy the same house today, I wouldn't be able to afford it. Let's break it down. When I bought my house, it was $649,000, and today it's getting quoted at $764,000. So that means my down payment in 2021 was $130K, and today it would be $153K. My interest rate is 2.8%. That's what I got in 2021. And today we're looking at about a 7.4% interest rate. Currently, my principal and interest is $21.33 a month. And if it was in today's rate, it would be $42.30 per month. Taxes and insurance come out to $567 for me, and for 2024, it would be $650. So that would mean my monthly mortgage payment, as it is today for me, since I bought my house in 2021, it's $2,700. But if I were to buy the exact same house in 2024, today, with all of these things, it would be $48.80 per month. I literally would not be able to afford the house that I bought 3 years ago. And that is insane.
3 years. I said 5 or 6. 3 years. Crazy. That's exactly what I was talking about at the beginning of this video. Prices of homes have stayed elevated while interest rates have continued to climb. One of those things are going to have to change. And the big question I feel like everyone's asking is, when will this change?